Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to all, and welcome back to Great Works of Muslim World. With us today, Dr. Muhammad Husni Muhammad Amin, a fellow at IKIM Center for Science and Environment Studies. Assalamualaikum, Doctor.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Haja
Yeah.
Mas.
How are you today?
I'm good. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you again. And welcome back for this program, for this segment for today, Dr. Husni.
It is
And
good to be welcome again and
yeah.
again.
Of course. And as for today, we're going to discuss about Nihayat al-Arab fi Funun al-Adab, al-Nuwayri's Compendium of Knowledge. Nihayat al-Arab fi Funun al-Adab is a massive 30-volume encyclopaedic work by Mamluk government bureaucrat, scholar, historian, and literature who lived and died in 14th century Egypt, which is Shihabuddin al-Nuwayri. So perhaps Dr. Husni, what can you tell us more about al-Nuwayri and what was the life like during his time?
Thank you, Haja Maslina. Uh, so today we're going to talk about this work, Nihayatul Arab fi Funun al-Adab, uh, by Shihabuddin Ahmad Ibn Abdul Wahab al-Nuwayri. So that's his full name, and he was born in 1279 in Egypt, and he died in 1313 in Cairo. So he's a little bit. He lived after the time of what we had talked about in our previous episode, Ibn Abi Usaybi'ah. So, uh, so he was a the name An-Nuwayri is a nisbah. It refers to his origin from a place called An-Nuwayra, and this place is in Egypt, uh, what today they call Beni Suef Governorate,
Mhm.
in the center of the country, in the center of Egypt.
Mhm.
And in his childhood, An-Nuwayri, he lived in Qus, in Upper Egypt, and he studied under somebody by the name uh, Faqih, by the name Ibn Daqiq al-Aid, and this is Faqih, one of the great scholars,
Mhm.
uh, an authority in Shafi'i madhab, and Egypt is well known for uh, uh, a lot of these great Shafi'i scholars.
Yeah.
One of them was Ahmad ibn Naqib al-Nusri, who produced Umdatus Salik, which is a
Mhm.
classical but still used manual on Shafi'i fiqh. So it's a book that is very handy to have around, and Egypt produce a lot of these scholars. But later An-Nuwayri, he studied in Al-Azhar University in Cairo, and we are lucky that for the last week we had a former Grand Mufti of Cairo, of Al Azhar, Sheikh Ali Jum'ah, who came here and
Yeah.
visited, notable people,
Mhm.
notable persons in this country, and he came to IKIM to meet
Yes.
our academics, and so and Nuwairi, coming back to Nuwairi, well, in Al Azhar University, he studied hadith and also sirah, in addition to history, and he was particularly skilled in calligraphy, in khat,
Oh.
and he there's a report says that Nuwairi, he made a copy of the Sahih al-Bukhari, the collection
Mhm.
of authentic Sahih hadith,
Hadith.
collected and compiled by Imam al-Bukhari. So he made, during that time there were no printers, there were no publishers. So
Yes.
so if you want to read a book, if you heard that somebody published a book, if you want to get a copy, and you have to be a wealthy person, you have to have money, so you approach. You obtain a copy of that, and then you approach a copyist, and this copyist, you contract him to copy the book for you.
Mhm.
And so al-Nuwayri, in this case, he was one of those. He made a living as a copyist,
Mhm.
and he made a copy of Sahih Bukhari, which he sold for 1,000 dinars. And
Wow.
during that time, that's a lot of money. That's a dinar is in gold, and if you
Yeah.
count today, maybe one dinar is close to is 900 ringgit, maybe close to a
1,000.
thousand
Mm.
ringgit today, give or take, yeah,
Mhm.
and accounting for the inflation. So during that time, one dinar, if we convert it to today, it would be close to 1,000 ringgit. So
Ringgit.
1,000 dinar, how much is that? It's about close to a million, isn't it?
Million. Yeah.
It's close to a million. So
Yeah.
he became, I think, he became very rich because of that. He's well off, but he worked as a civil servant. He worked as a government bureaucrat, as you have introduced in the beginning.
Mhm.
He worked with the Mamluk government under the administration of Sultan An-Nasir Muhammad. And this is Al-Malik Al-Nasir Nasiruddin Muhammad ibn Qalawun. And but he started working with the government at the early age of 23, and he managed to rotate around the roles, various roles, including as a property manager for the sultan, and also a superintendent of the army finances in Tripoli. uh,
Mhm.
they had a standing army, the Mamluk standing army, and then in order to have a standing army, then you have to have the support, the ancillary staffs taking care of the registrar, the payrolls and whatnot, what have you. So the Mamluk government was quite an efficient government,
Mhm.
because it had a bureaucracy. It was
Yeah.
well oiled government machinery,
Mhm.
because this is something that they developed, in a tradition since the time of the Umayyad, time of the Abbasid, uh,
Yeah.
and well into the time of the Mamluk. And they say that at some point after 1312, he retired from government service and took a
Mhm.
job copying manuscripts in order to support himself while compiling his encyclopedia. So, so, um, uh, so he was, well, in his late 30s, I would presume, when he retired from government service, and he took his job. So remember that he took this one job, and he got 1,000 dinars for it, and that made him a wealthy person.
Yeah.
But that is for him to be able to pursue his another of his hobby, we can say,
Mm.
compiling his encyclopedia. So imagine somebody who worked in the government, and then when he retired, you do something, publish a compilation, Sahih Bukhari, and getting, and then pursuing your hobby, which some people do. They start, if you compare to now, if we are prudent, we manage well our finances, we are not a spendthrift, and then we minimize our expenditure, we keep it to a minimum, and then we save a lot of money, in our EPF, in private retirement scheme or what have you. And then, you keep a lot of money, and then you can retire. So you can retire early, and start up. People, they do startup businesses. They sell tudungs on TikToks, and they get very
Correct.
rich. And then some other people, they took to writing novels. So
Yeah.
Shihabuddin and Wairi, he did, what many people nowadays they do. They retire from government service. They go into, he wants to produce an encyclopedia, uh, which we call as Nihayatul Arab fi Funun al-Adab. So and after that, and after 1312, after he retired, there's a huge gap there. He lived on for another 20 years, and then finally he died in 1333 in Cairo, in the city of Cairo. So
Mm.
that's a lot of what we can talk about An-Nuwayri, and
Yeah.
touching a little bit about the work that he produced.
Mhm. Very interesting about Al-Nuwayri. And
Yeah.
like you said, he was born 1279 and died in 1333.
Yes.
I mean, it's quite
He did.
means quite long as well, right? For and he also studied hadith and also sirah is quite interesting. And
Mm.
perhaps what is his book Nihayat al-Arab fi Funun al-Adab is all about. Last week talk about the book of it's quite hard for me to pronounce Uyun. And
Uyun
this book,
al-Anba fi
yeah,
tabak
oh,
fi funun no, that's the wrong title. This is Nihayatul Arab fi
yeah,
funun
no,
al-adab.
I mean, these
Yeah.
books are related with this book related to the other books, or very different books, which I mean, not related at all. This book
This is
and
not
another book.
related. Oh, but
Oh,
although they are related insofar as the earlier book that we mentioned in the previous episode is a biographical encyclopedia, and this work, on the other hand, is a proper encyclopedia. It is not confined to just biographies, but it talks a lot of things which we will talk about later.
mhm. So
Yeah,
perhaps you want to elaborate a little bit about this book, maybe more
yeah,
to adab. I'm not really sure.
yeah, sure. So the title is very telling. It says that Nihayatul Arab, Nihayat. We can translate into something at the end, or the ultimate, the
Mm-hmm.
final thing. Arab means something that you hope for, or something that you is an ambition, something
Mm-hmm.
that you aspire to. Fi fununil adab, mean in in the arts. Funun comes from the word fun, and it's jamak is a plural. We call it funun arts, uh, in al-adab. So remember that last time I said that uh, uh, medicine was an art. I
Yes,
think it
correct.
has,
Yeah.
because it has got to do with things which uh, uh, human beings work with their hands. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good also that I mentioned here. I was my professor, Professor Muhammad Zaini Usman, is also mentioned about the other term that is related to sina'ah, fun, is what the Arabs call as itqan. And I looked up in dictionary, itqan meaning precision. When you are being meticulous in something that you do. Just imagine, like a clock, a watch, a wristwatch that
Mm-hmm.
you buy from, say, Tissot or Rolex. Even
Yeah.
if you send a particular timepiece to the clock repairer or watchmaker for service, and then you observe him, and while he was doing his repair work, on the timepiece, you will see there's a lot of tiny mechanical parts
Yes,
inside there,
correct.
and using the magnifying glass.
Magnifier glass.
Yes, he's able to using a tweezer, and it's almost impossible. I
Yeah.
mean, to do it with your fingers. So
Yes.
you need a tweezer to move around the
Small
mechanical
things,
part
tiny
to
things.
yes, to repair it. So you need what you call precision
Yeah.
tools to do it. So that is the kind of thing that ITCON is involved. It involves precision to arrive to your to arrive at the exact uh, thing or parts that you need to replace and put back and repair. uh, and if you look into the classical Arabic lexicon, this really big dictionary such as
Mhm.
Lisan Arab, I have
Yes.
it at the back of me. If you see, that's the
Yes, I
one
can see.
at the back in my background.
Yeah.
So itqan comes from the word takana, and takana meaning to do it really precisely, to do it to do something meticulously. And the noun of that, the noun of the word takana is teknun. Teknun. And in Malay, we have this word tekun.
Oh, yeah.
So this word tekun, bekerja dengan tekun, to work precisely, to work meticulously. It reflects this Arabic word teknun. And itqan refers to the doing of this uh, precision work. And that is the kind of vocabulary that they used to have. They have
Mhm.
what sina'ah earlier mentioned. They have what do you call it? Uh, 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 and then they have itqan, and then coming to al-Nuwayri, they have this word funun. And funun, again, these works refer to that word itqan, takana.
Yeah.
And remember that I said the Arabic world sits very closely to the Greek world.
Yes.
They are only separated
By the
by
Mediterranean.
the Mediterranean Sea,
Yeah.
so they are very close.
Yeah.
So and in Greek language, you have this word techne, which when you combine it with study in
Mhm.
logia, you
Yeah.
get technologia, which the modern word technology comes from. Imagine how exciting when I
Yeah.
find that. So that's why I say that many of the sciences today, they are not actually science, but they are technology. They are science, not about the study of nature, but the
Mhm.
study about the things that people do with their hands.
Yeah. Mhm.
So now you have things like AI, you have this coming from the computer science,
Mhm.
automation, robotics, and
Yeah.
then you have things like now we have Mid Journey. People no longer draw or paint pictures, paint a painting
Mhm.
using their own hands, but they program it. I mean, they use their hands, of course. But
Yeah.
no longer using
You know,
paint,
in the yeah.
color, but
Yes.
using lines of code.
Mhm.
Yeah, Mid Journey use this to paint, paintings using the computer,
Mhm.
and not involving the brush, not involving the paint,
The colors.
the colors, the various
Yeah.
colors that you have.
Yes.
And now you have, uh, but this fununul adab meaning the erudition. I mean, erudition meaning you go deep and you go wide into a subject, and then you go deep into it. Erudition, and you write a lot about it. And adab means two things. There's the adab that emerges from hikmah. You
Mhm.
have, first you have to have ilm, you have knowledge, and then from knowledge you get a specialized kind of knowledge, the knowledge that God gives to mankind, which is ma'rifah. And from there you get hikmah. Hikmah is what Professor Said Muhammad Naqib Al-Atas says, the knowledge that is given to prophets, the knowledge and hikmah from hakama, meaning putting things in the proper place. The knowledge of things in their proper places. That's why you see the heavens are up there, the earth down beneath our feet.
Mm-hmm.
You have king in thrones, criminals in jails.
Yeah.
So people, things, and people and things, they have their proper place, and that is hikmah. And then from there you have adab, meaning to put things in their proper place. When you know that the spoon or the spoon belongs in the kitchens,
Yeah.
and pillow belongs on the bed, so you don't misplace them, that is hikmah. And
Mm-hmm.
then your proper place
Mm-hmm.
as a leader, as an employee. You have your proper places, and there's a proper conduct to it. You are supposed to do your job. You are supposed to be courteous to others, and then you have to employ the right language to it. So adab is putting oneself in the proper place. So with your teachers, uh,
Mm-hmm.
you are not supposed to use harsh languages.
Yeah.
With your parents, you have to be respectful, and then with the children, you have to discipline them. That is adab. But
Mm-hmm.
there's another kind of adab. I think they put it with the mad sign. So adab. So one is adab, one is adab. It means what is today is normally translated as literature or writing or
Mm-hmm.
belles lettres. It refers to the art of writing,
Mm-hmm.
writing properly, so that not only it conveys the right information, the correct, the proper, the right information and the proper knowledge, it is also so in place that it is pleasing to the reader. So it's not like when you read your technical manual, how to operate your car. It's not like that.
Yeah.
But when you read it, you get such a pleasure from reading it. Nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
people they derive pleasure from what? From watching YouTube, from watching TikToks, from
Yeah.
scrolling endlessly on their mobile, looking at their social media news feed. But in those days, in the days of the belles lettres of the past, they
Mm-hmm.
derive such a pleasure from reading, from knowing
Yeah.
things, and it is
Mm-hmm.
written so beautifully, so that you enjoy reading it. The
Yeah.
language, the words are placed in the correct and proper place, so it's not out of place, but it's pleasing when the eyes read it, and you want to go reading it, you want to go back to it again and again. So that is uh, on the title alone, Haja Masuna. We,
Yeah.
we
Yes.
haven't gone into the encyclopedia. So it's like we said, it's 30 volume.
Yes.
In the modern publication. In fact, I have one in my personal collection, the whole 30 plus one volume of the Fihris.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what in Arabic works. It is normally like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have several volumes, and the last volume will usually be the Fihris or the index, and it tells
Mm-hmm.
you, if you want to look up a particular chapter or particular topic, you should go to this volume, and because there's so many volumes
Because
involved.
of the volume of the book, so they
Yes,
need to produce another book for the index
another
itself.
volume that contains just the index.
Yeah.
The index goes hundreds of pages. So
Yeah.
so with regards to uh, Nihayatul Arab, so we briefly, well, luckily for us, a scholar by the name of Elias Muhanna, he manages to capture some. He takes some chapters and produce this single uh, Penguin Classics edition, and he managed to reduce uh, more than 9,000 pages of that 30 volume which I have mentioned, managed to pare it down, abridge it to one volume, and translate it into English for the first time. And he
Mm-hmm.
says here it contains entries on everything from medieval moon worshipping cults, aphrodisiacs, substance of clouds, on how to get, and then to talking about deliciousness of cheese made from buffalo milk and nesting habits of flamingo. So when we say the title of our uh, topic today uh, is a compendium of knowledge, Al-Nuwayri compendium of uh, knowledge, uh, we we are basically saying that there's a lot of things that Al-Nuwayri talked about in this book, and he divides it into five sections. In the 30 volume, there are five sections. uh, First off, he starts with geography and astronomy, and by geography he started off on talking about creation on the heavens and the earth. So he started off with cosmology, talking about the universe as an order, you know. So in the Quran, it says God talks about samawat wal ard. So he talks about heavens. God talks about heavens and earth. So this book tries to describe, tries to gather all the knowledge, all that has been written about the heaven and the earth, and presenting it to the readers, a kind of cosmological narrative. There's a story involved with the creation, how the heavens were created, talking about meteorological phenomena. In Arabic, they have particular names of phenomena. I think I read several days ago. I remember reading a newsfeed. People talk about how the Muslims in the ancient time, they were able to know that there are only 12 hours in a day. How would you know that without a watch?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a mystery, isn't it, Jamasina?
Yes, correct.
It is because in those days they've already named the position of the sun, and then this during the day, and put the position of the moon during the day, because even with moon they have different names for it. You have hilal, you have qamar, and uh, hilal referring to the crescent moon, the
Mm-hmm.
new moon, and then you have the crescent moon, and qamar, and then which refers to the full moon. Okay, so the sun at various positions throughout the day, they have names for it, and so is for the moon. So that's how they. So in this book, it describes all the meteorological phenomena. They even have names for different types of clouds, and nights and days, earth, mountains, seas, island, rivers, and springs, all. And then natures of different nations and inherent dispositions of their inhabitants. Uh, Remember that when I in the earlier episode, the previous episode
Yeah.
in Abi Usaibi'ah, why is it important to know the classification of physicians
Yes.
and where they are coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's got to do with the medicine that they are practicing. And nowadays, if you see, some doctors, when usually senior doctors, whenever they have, you know, uh, news to new doctors coming from
Mm-hmm.
overseas,
Yes.
attaching themselves to the hospital as a houseman officer,
Mm-hmm.
house officer.
Yeah.
new doctors. Then you will ask, if you have your doctor friends, you can ask them. They will have this, they will always have this complaint about new doctors
Need-
not knowing many
Yeah.
things, because these people, they have trained overseas,
Yes.
and in countries such as Egypt, in the UK, in Ireland, they have their own doctrines, shall we say,
Yes.
shall I put it like that. Different way of treating,
Mm-hmm.
different way of diagnosing a disease, different way of treating a disease. They have their own protocols and doctrines when it comes to that. So uh, it is because human beings, by nations, we have different dispositions. uh, when I say this, it means, you know some race, according to Nuwayri, some race, they are more prone to certain types of illnesses. Some people, because they have, because, uh, I don't mean to be offensive, but because they are black skins, therefore they have, even science can attest to this, they have more melanin than us,
Yes.
or even to compare to white people.
Yeah.
And the melanin causes the skin, human skin, to be darker. The
Mm-hmm.
amount of melanin in the skin, and in darker skinned people, they are more resistant to uh,
This
the
skin,
ultraviolet
yeah,
radiation from the sun.
skin
But
disease also.
they are less prone to skin diseases
Yeah.
related to ultraviolet
Mm-hmm.
rays
Yes.
found in the sunlight. And people who are Caucasian, they come from European countries and
Mm-hmm.
Western countries. They have lesser melanin in their skin. Their skin tone is lighter as a result of that. So when they come to African countries, or countries which are located in the equatorial line, such as our
Mm-hmm.
country,
Yes.
Malaysia, if they stand too long in the sun, their skin will start to
Red.
become red, and then rash will
Burns.
develop, and then their skin will peel, because the
Mm-hmm.
melanin protects the skin. So different race have different dispositions, and this is
Yeah.
what Anwar talked about in encyclopedia. This
Mm-hmm.
was in uh, 13th, 14th century. They are already talking about this. This was
Mm-hmm.
about more than 600 years ago. They were already talking about this classification of. This
Mm-hmm.
is before Ibn Khaldun in his Muqaddimah.
Mm-hmm.
And in the fifth section, in the second section, it talks about human beings, the life stages and nature of the human being. It talks about proverbs and parables,
Mm-hmm.
people during that time, because they don't have picture taking technology. Don't have photography. So how do we describe things? How do you describe somebody to a person whom that person never met? How do
Yeah.
you describe it? So you use, proverbs, parables. You use writings, so that the person, when he gets the meaning, he will try to construct
Mm-hmm.
from whatever words that you have said to him. When you convey the meaning to him, he will try to construct a mental image, and based
Mm-hmm.
on the wordings that you use, the parables,
Yeah.
the, the analogies that you use,
Mm-hmm.
similitudes, what the Arabs call as amthal.
Mm-hmm.
So in this, I think there's a verse in the Quran. uh, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. It says, if God uh, send down the Quran
Mm-hmm.
on mountains, it will be destroyed because
Yeah.
of the great fear,
Correct.
because of the
The
weight,
content. Yeah.
the content, the
Mm-hmm.
weighty meaning of the Quran. And
Yes.
then God says that is the parable, the amthal, tilka al-amthalu nadribuha, that God has struck. So mithal or amthal, similitudes, are meant to strike people. When you say somebody is like a lion, doesn't mean that the person is a lion.
Yes.
It just means that the person is ferocious as a
Mm-hmm.
lion. So you can mean when you construct that mental image of a ferocious lion, and when you say that you describe somebody as a lion, you mean that he is ferocious as a lion, then
Fierce.
you have this mental picture in your head. Oh, this person is ferocious. He's
Yes.
maybe he's bad tempered, or if he becomes angry with somebody, he
Yeah.
will become really loud. So this person is clearly not somebody to
Mess
be
with.
trusted with, right?
Yeah.
So and then he talked about praise, invective, and talks about music, and then he goes talk about ruler, uh, the people's subjects and
Mm-hmm.
advisors, and then this hadith that says kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ulin an ra'iyatihi. Every one of you is a shepherd, I mean a leader, a ruler.
Mm-hmm.
We had an episode on that when we talked about Nasihatul Muluk of
Yeah.
Imam Ghazali, and talks about the kind of people that the ruler is ruling, and the kind of advisors that he's expected to have, and on the craft of secretaryship. There, this is where he talks yet again about Funun al-Adab, the art of writing, the belles lettres, because the craft of secretaryship is so important, because what the secretary writes upon the dictation of the ruler can decide the fate of entire nation. Because if he writes it wrongly, say the ruler wants to write something to his counterpart in another country, and this secretary writes the letter on behalf of the sultan, and then the government seal is affixed upon that seal. So now the content of that letter, although it was dictated by the sultan, it is ultimately is written down, penned down by the secretary. So the fate of the country now depends on what he has written down on that
Yes.
letter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if the ruler meant peace, but the secretary wrote wrongly, maybe caused some insult
Mm-hmm.
to the king's counterpart, then two countries might go to war,
Yeah.
and because of that people may die, not even not hundreds, but maybe hundreds of thousands and maybe millions,
Yeah.
just because the secretary has made a mistake in writing. And so during that time, if the secretary is found to have made such a mistake, they punish it heavily. Some of these secretary, they punish it really capital punishment. It's if you're not punished to death, then you might have your tongue cut out,
Wow.
because the tongue represents your speech.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever, when the king dictate to you, you write it down, you confirm, you talk to the king, you confirm that exactly what he has
Yeah.
said, the things that he said, that you need to put down, you need to pen down on the piece of paper. And those times you cannot be wasting paper like today. You have to really make up your mind and write it, and there's no mistake, right? So that is the importance of secretaryship, which Anwari stresses, make it fit to stress as a section in his book. Then he talks about beasts and classification of animals, carnivorous animals, wild beasts, livestock, venomous creatures, birds, and fish. He goes into biology, animal classification. And then he talked about, on the fourth section, he talked about plants, vegetables, and foodstuffs, trees and fruits, aromatic plants that give out scent. You
Mm-hmm.
make it into perfume. And then gum resins, manas, the sweet kind of food that, manna wal salwa in the Quran. It's mentioned that
Yes.
God caused it to descend for the Israeli to eat, and then on aromatics, medicines, and properties of things in nature. Now he goes into what we call as folklore medicine, folklore chemistry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in the fifth section, it talks about uh, 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 the history up until the Mamluk state. So in the beginning of history during the Abbasid time, you have somebody like Imam At-Tabari who writes Tarikh Tabari from
Mm-hmm.
the creation of mankind till the early kings, and then Bani Israel, and then the time of Nabi Isa, the Roman Empire, and then the emergence of Islam up until the time of Imam Al-Tabari, which is during the Abbasid age. So, and then you have somebody like Al-Nuwayri sums the early history and then adds in the time of the Mamluk. So that's how historians during that time they will always do. So it's not so surprising if you see the same thing that the things in the beginning of Nihayat al-Arab, which talks about the same thing that Al-Tabari talks in his Tarikh Tabari.
Yeah.
So I think that is pretty much the whole lot that we can cover
Yeah.
in the 40 minutes of our
Yeah.
talk
Mhm.
today.
But this book is quite, maybe we can say a complete book, because it consists of adab,
Yes.
history, science, and many other things as well, as you mentioned in the chapters, right? So
Yeah.
maybe perhaps for the conclusion for this week, Dr. Husni, about this
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah. Same like what I said earlier on in the previous episode when I talked about the usefulness of this kind of works. Um, like I said, it's in the original Arabic. Nihayatul Arab is about 31 volumes, and who in their right mind would spend an entire lifetime and money and resources on translating such work in English. Here in Elinas Muhanna had done uh, pretty good job of giving us access to this work by Al-Nuwayri, but uh, there's a lot more that we can dig. Well, this is an abridgment, meaning he took out a lot of things. And we miss a huge chunk of the knowledge which Nuwari could give us. So I think that as Muslim, this is a rich tradition that we have, that we
Mhm.
should go into, that we should be proud of, and we should go into studying these works to gain a lot of things, a lot of knowledge. Well, we got to ask ourselves why the Westerners, they spend a lot of things, studying the ancient manuscripts on medicine to produce, pills and tablets that we consume today. But there's a thing uh, about technology of the West. Now the West has become very good in the know-how of technology,
Yeah.
uh, and Muslims are lagging behind. But in terms of why they did it, they are not clear on that. On the Western worldview, uh, if you're a Westerner, then you got to figure out yourself where you're coming from, what is the purpose of your life here on earth,
Mhm.
where you are going. But for the Muslims, this has not been the problem because we know exactly where we come from. We've come from
Yes.
God,
Mhm.
from the other world, and then our purpose in this world is to make livelihood, to
Mhm.
support ourselves, to ultimately to gain knowledge about this natural world. But it's not an end in itself, but only a means to an end. Why do we want to know about the whole world? Is one is to know our creator ultimately, uh, because we've been put on this world to know his divine power, how he manifests things, his great power, his creativity. So we are enjoying to say, whenever there's a phenomenon, we are enjoying to say, ma khalaqta hadha batila subhanaka faqina azab nar. We say that nothing that God creates in this world is in vain, and glory to be to him, to God, and we ask him to protect us from the hellfire. So knowledge, for scholars like al-Nuwayri, is always within that framework, even though it's about studying the things which human beings have done with their hands.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see that you study the natural world,
Yeah.
you classify things,
Mm-hmm.
and you learn lessons from it. But also, we study technology because these are creation of the human hands, and
Yeah.
ultimately who gives the idea for us to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
In the Quran it says فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. This is again what I've learned from my professor Zain Uthman. uh, the things that we are given ideas about to create, it's ultimately coming from God. So when we do a technology, it has to be within that framework. That technology must ultimately serve the purpose of giving us comfort, and making our lives easier, so that we can dedicate our lives in worshiping of God. So I think that's enough for conclusion, and ultimately the ultimate ambition of reading such works.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Husni, and we hope that this discussion will benefit many people, many listeners, and also audience who watch on the Facebook right now. And inshallah, we'll come back on next week for a different topic. And
Yeah,
thank you very much again, Dr. Husni.
my
Assalamualaikum.
genuine pleasure, Haja Maslina.